Oh, thanks. You were the one.
Well, I did. I enjoyed it. I was listening to it. I just thought the other side, the fear mongering on the ACA, most legal scholars think that's a silly argument. There's no way they're going to say it's not severable. But nevertheless, they argued that. I'm astonished sometimes, Senator, at what goes on the other side.
Yeah, I'm no legal scholar, but my reading of it is also that severability is a really important topic, and I don't think I want to ask Judge Barrett about that today because then it will be confused by the media as us saying we shouldn't be doing outcomes, and then it's like we're doing outcomes. But it does feel like there are a whole bunch of people who just want to use this hearing as a get out the vote strategy, and whether or not
Yes.
it's connected to reality for what might happen in the court after the election doesn't concern them very much, and it's kind of a gross distortion of what we should be doing at the civics level of making sure the American public understands what a confirmation hearing is, because what's a judge's and especially a justice's job?
I would also like you gave a lesson as a PhD from Yale, a historian. The
Stop. I don't
American
ever want
people,
to admit any of
yeah,
that.
I know. But as a historian, the great convulsion of the Civil War, which was, as Lincoln's second inaugural said, the necessary justice done to the United States, resulted in two things: the Judiciary Act of 1869, but before that, the 14th Amendment of 1868. Those two things are cornerstones of the rule of law. And when people talk about court packing, and they won't even admit what it means, they are undermining the fundamental rule of law. I get very exercised about this, Senator. They should not, if they're going to try and pack the court, they ought to at least be upfront about the danger that it poses.
Yeah, I mean the structure we have, these three branches that check and balance one another, it's fragile. And if you end the deliberative structure of the United States Senate and you do that for the purposes of packing the court, you're really fundamentally remaking the American system. And we got lots of stuff that's broken in our public life and public square and civil discourse and public trust right now. And it's an incredibly dangerous thing to do. I think it's a terrible idea, but at least be upfront with the American people. And instead, they've decided to come up with this dodge where they just have this Orwellian spin by saying, well, we know that in our focus grouping, court packing is a term that nobody likes, so why don't we just say the other side did it? So now they're talking about filling open vacancies as court packing. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's like the difference between taking the field and shooting the referee.
Well put. I also think that when Leader McConnell blocked all of the Democratic judges in the last 2 years, it was payback for Harry Reid breaking the filibuster. I mean, that was just the quid pro quo of the Senate, and I don't know why we can't admit that. And the Senate is a majoritarian institution when it comes to nominations now. That's Harry Reid's doing. But what I really worry about, and I'd like to have your thoughts on this. People always think I'm an alarmist when I bring up the Roman Revolution, which actually it takes 70 years for Rome to lose its republican status because of continued assaults on the mos maiorum, the way that things were done, just continually assaulting traditional norms. We're going through that right now, and people don't understand. You can't shake the pillars without bringing down the house.
I strongly agree. I mean, when I was running in 2013, 14, one of the most common topics on the trail was the Waters of the U.S. rule that was about the EPA and trying to remake the way we regulate agriculture, even when it's intrastate issues. But I'd say a close second was executive overreach, and executive overreach follows from legislative underreach. So now going back to your Roman history, if the Senate just becomes a place that seems like a nice honorific, it's a title people want, but it's not an institution that wants to actually work through the hard choices and trade-offs that have to do with public policy and power, if it just becomes a place where people grandstand because they want your job, folks here wish they could be pundits instead of actually having any influence over the legislative decision making that's happening, then inevitably you're going to grow an administrative state. Inevitably you're going to grow an executive branch. And the public then starts to think of the presidency as this quasi kingly power. And when you do that with majoritarian 51-49 voting, it means that all of culture has to be swallowed up by the politicization of, I got to get to 51-49 because otherwise the world's going to end. Washington, D.C. is just not supposed to be that important in people's daily lives.
Yeah, Senator, you obviously prepare, and you're right about that. But in the minute that we have left, I hate the missed opportunity. Justices come out for questions once in their life. And to use it for political grandstanding instead of the education of the American public about what judges do is, to me, tragic.
I agree. We have to have people understand what judicial activism is, why it's bad, and why putting on a black robe, cloaking yourself, is all symbiotic with not standing for election. It's symbiotic with lifetime tenure because this is supposed to be the apolitical branch, and that shouldn't be a Republican argument. It should be something that Democrats also want to argue for, so that the political branches have the accountability to the people.